Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I'm your host Louis Song, and today we're going to be discussing some actual Dolphins news that has taken place. So once again, we are talking about Dalvin Cook, but we are talking about Dalvin Cook in a slightly different vein than the other times we talked about him. But before we do that, just want to go ahead and get it out of the way for y'all so we can get into the old Dolphins talk. Let's go ahead and briefly mention that this show is brought to you, as always, by our good friends over at You Brake Wheel Fix. You Brake Wheel Fix, the complete automotive wheel solution. Ever parked too close to the sidewalk curb? You Brake Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, and curb rash. Or maybe your wheels are faded or peeling, you don't need to replace them, as You Brake Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new. Offering complete refinish options through powder coating, machining, and polishing, You Brake Wheel Fix is the answer to all of your wheel needs. And if you're just looking to give your ride a new look, You Brake Wheel Fix also offers many car customizing options such as new custom wheels and tires from your favorite brands, performance upgrades, window tinting, and suspension modifications. Located just south of Aventura, you can reach Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at youbrakewheelfix.com. They are really active on all social media platforms at You Brake Wheel Fix, so shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and get an estimate in just minutes. So don't delay, go to You Brake Wheel Fix and start customizing your ride to show off your Dolphins fandom today. This show is also brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. Just choose whether your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat. They give you free squares, special Taco Tuesday promos, Flex Friday specials where you can get your money back if you lose, or multiply the amount of money you can normally win. With offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up if you are any kind of a fantasy sports fan. So use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, it's promo code 5, FIVE. Go to PrizePicks.com, deposit your $100, and let PrizePicks give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with and get started winning today. All right, folks, so let's talk about Dalvin Cook again. So why are we doing this again? Because there was another report that came out. So we've been talking about how we think the Miami Dolphins will be a good fit for Dalvin Cook. We've talked about how Dalvin Cook has said that he would have a really good fit with the Miami Dolphins. He really likes the roster that's being built here. He really likes the idea of being able to go back home. We've talked about all this stuff before. But now we can officially say that the Miami Dolphins have actually given Dalvin Cook an offer. It's been reported by Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald and 27 hours earlier on the OnlyFins Discord server by Chris Kaufman if you want to go ahead and get some insider information that you can't get anywhere else. Again, it's only $3 a month to be able to get in there and just talk with some of the most educated Dolphins people around. But that being said, once again, Dalvin Cook has been given an offer by the Miami Dolphins. Now, even the 3 yards per carry crew on OnlyFins do not have any idea as to what the offer actually is, but I can speculate based on everything we've discussed previously that it is most likely a Dolphins-friendly deal, not necessarily a Dalvin Cook-friendly deal, because we had to remember what the context of this situation is. Dalvin Cook has said repeatedly that he wants a team that wants Dalvin Cook. In essence, he wants a team that is willing to pay him close to the amount of money that he was going to be making in Minnesota. As a reminder, he was owed $10 million by the Minnesota Vikings. He is now no longer there, so which team is going to be willing to give him $8 million or so? I personally do not believe that any team is going to give him that much money. I do not think there's any team out there that is desperate enough to give Dalvin Cook, who, whether we like him or not, no matter how much we think that he would be a luxury for the team and what he can actually bring to the table, I do not think that there is any team out there that is looking at Dalvin Cook and saying, you are the missing piece to this roster, and we think that you are the key to us making the Super Bowl. I really don't think that any team is doing that. However, once again, we have some certain things in Miami's favor. Number one, no income tax. So no state income tax, which means that any team that offers him something along the lines of saying $7 million, $8 million or so, he'll probably only see maybe $2 million less than that at the end of the day, because you know how the taxes work. So let's say they offer him $8 million, he'll probably see only maybe 6.5, million of that at best after taxes and everything is completed. Whereas if he comes to Miami, then that is no longer an issue. He will not have to worry about whether or not he's going to be taxed to death, because Miami is a place where he can just go ahead and keep the money that he's actually being offered. So that's number one. So Miami ends up giving him, let's say, a $5 million deal. Again, no insider information on that. This is just speculation. Let's say the Dolphins offered him $5 million. So he actually gets to keep that $5 million as opposed to another team offering him 7 or 8, and he only gets to see 6.5 or 6 because, taxes end up wrecking everything when it comes to these guys. So that would give some level of incentive because while technically he would be getting more money from the other team, here is the other factor that we have to take into account, and it's a factor that we've talked about many times on this show. Where does Dalvin Cook actually want to play? We've been having this discussion several times. We have speculated that Dalvin Cook really wants to be able to come home and play for his hometown Miami Dolphins again. He wants to be able to come back to Miami. He wants to be in the place that he was able to make a name for himself. And after that happens, he's able to just enjoy the season ahead of him. He's fully healthy for the first time in a very long time, or so he says anyway. And I can't imagine why he would want to go anywhere else at this point, because that is the one thing that no other team in the NFL has to their advantage. Dalvin Cook has never been a Miami Dolphin, but I would imagine that since he has grown up here in Miami, that he has at least had fantasies of him being a member of the Miami Dolphins, and now he can finally live that fantasy in real life. He's had a great career with the Minnesota Vikings. He has had some fantastic seasons with them. He'll probably go down as one of the best running backs that the Minnesota Vikings have ever had, maybe right up there with Adrian Peterson and other guys. But with that being said, Dalvin Cook now has an opportunity here to not just be able to come home and play in Miami. He has a chance to increase his stock value in the seasons to come. There's been a lot of talk over the years about how running backs, once they reach a certain age, once there's a certain amount of tread on those tires, that they're just no longer the same person. We've been talking about guys like a Derrick Henry, who is in the Tennessee Titans. They've been talking about how long before those wheels come off. It doesn't seem like Derrick Henry is slowing down anytime soon, but he's maybe the days of him being the only part of the offense that actually functions, maybe those days are coming to an end. All right, that's fine, but he's still a fantastic player. Dalvin Cook is the same way, but Dalvin Cook has not been quite as dominating as a Derrick Henry has, because Derrick Henry is in a whole other level. I don't think there's anybody in the entire NFL who can measure up to Derrick Henry. If Derrick Henry were available to be picked up in free agency, I would drop everything immediately, and I would say, go get Derrick Henry. That is the missing piece to this offense. But we are not talking about Derrick Henry. We are talking about Dalvin Cook. And here we have the Dalvin Cook situation. For what it's worth, and I will bring this up as well, there is a video clip of Jeff Darlington going on the national television and saying that he still believes, after all this time, that it's more than likely that Dalvin Cook ends up becoming a Miami Dolphin, that it's probable that he lands in Miami when all is said and done. And Jeff Darlington is not an idiot. Jeff Darlington is usually very careful about how he says things. He did not make it all the way to where he is now by being reckless with his statements. He did not make it all the way to where he is by having poor sources or by making poor decisions with things he does decide to report. So if Jeff Darlington says, and he has been consistent with this entire time, he believes that Dalvin Cook will eventually become a Miami Dolphin. And now we have heard a report that the Miami Dolphins have officially offered Dalvin Cook a contract. Now, if I am going to speculate on what that contract might be, I am going to say something along the lines of it's probably maybe $5 million a year. That's the base salary. And perhaps there are more incentives for things like if he gets 1,000 yards, if he plays all 17 games, if the Dolphins make the playoffs, if he manages to get 10 touchdowns rushing or something along those lines. Those would be things that I would imagine would be incentives for him to make a little more money. Now, is Dalvin Cook looking for a contract filled with incentives? I would venture to guess no. But this is where, once again, we have to play this factor in game. We have to talk about this. Does Dalvin Cook value being in Miami, going back home, being part of the team that he always wanted to be a part of, I imagine, at least in his heart of hearts, based on when he was as a kid? I don't think he had another favorite team. Most people, in my opinion, that I've noticed, if they grew up in Miami, they usually end up being a fan of the Miami Dolphins. And I can personally understand that. The Miami Dolphins are a very storied franchise, and regardless of whether they've struggled in the past years or not, there is still something to be said about being a part of the Miami Dolphins. So here you have Dalvin Cook. He went to college, Florida State. He was able to make a name for himself. He managed to be drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, went off the walls, managed to run for 1,000 yards in the past 3 seasons. And that's with a supposedly messed up shoulder. So if he's now not messed up in the shoulder, if he is fully healthy, once again, I ask this question. Why would you not want Dalvin Cook on your roster? He's not even 30 years old yet. Raheem Mostert is older than he is. Yes, he has less tread on the tires, but what is more important here? The amount of times he's actually rushed the football, or are we talking about his age? Because if that's the case, then Derrick Henry should have slowed down a long time ago. Frank Gore should have stopped way earlier than he actually did. And I know that I'm just putting out exceptions out here, but usually when a guy is continually productive, he still has something left in the tank. Now, if you saw a season where he had completely slowed down, if you saw a season where his production had dropped off drastically and you thought, whoa, hold on, what's going on here? Then I could argue, okay, I don't see the real reason to bring him in. Somebody like a Jordan Howard, for instance, where he had already fallen off the wagon and he was no longer the guy that he was when he was at his peak. That I can understand. Why would the Dolphins bother to bring this guy in? I get that part. Or Sony Michel. We tried so hard to like Sony Michel. We thought maybe this guy still has something left in. Nope, he had nothing left in that tank. He was done. He didn't even make the roster. But we had already seen signs that Sony Michel was starting to pass out a little bit here. The only way you notice anything wrong with Dalvin Cook at this point is if you start looking at some severely advanced metrics, like how many plays were a net zero or a no gain or a loss of yards, as opposed to how many times he has an explosive play. Those are the kinds of stats that you have to start looking for in order to find something wrong with Dalvin Cook. Otherwise, this last year was just another year where he ran for over 1,000 yards. And that is something that you just can't dismiss. You cannot dismiss it just because, we already have these guys. We don't need this other guy. The argument is very easy. Did the Miami Dolphins need to draft Cam Smith? No. They wanted to, because they felt like he had something solid that he could contribute to this team and give Vic Fangio just another chess piece for him to play with to make this defense something fantastic. Oh, by the way, even before drafting Cam Smith, did they really need to go and trade for Jalen Ramsey, or did they see an opportunity to get an elite player and seize it? Carpe diem, seize the day. There it is. They managed to get Jalen Ramsey, and all they had to give up was a 3rd-round pick and Hunter Long, for God's sakes. That's it. Yeah, you had to pay him, but that goes with the territory. You're not getting somebody who might be elite. You're not looking for somebody who may have the potential to one day be a top player. You are picking up a guy who, when he is at his peak and when he is healthy and when he is in a scheme that suits what it is he does best, he is one of, if not the best cornerback in the NFL. It was not that long ago that people were putting Jalen Ramsey at the very top of their cornerback lists, and now all of a sudden, because he's in Miami, we're going to expect that, they got him and all, but he's not that special anymore. He's falling off a little bit. It's like, okay, so what? Even if that is true, how much? It's not like he's a scrub. It's not like he was terrible. He's just not as dominant as he used to be. Okay, so still a top 5 cornerback. And all you had to do was give up a 3rd rounder for him, and now you are able to pair him up with Xavier Howard on the boundary if that's where you decide to go. Or alternatively, you could turn him into a slot cornerback and let Kader Kohu be on the boundary, or you can let Cam Smith be on the boundary, or you can make Jalen Ramsey play safety, and then you can throw Javon Holland all over the place, and then you can have Cam Smith and Kader Kohu do it. You have no idea how much versatility just got opened up with Jalen Ramsey being here. We've talked about it. We've discussed it. But we haven't gotten to see it yet. And I think once we see it, we're going to be more in awe of anything that we have seen yet. So now we have Dalvin Cook. And Dalvin Cook has been considered at least a top 10, if not top 5 running back in the NFL for the past 3 years. And now all of a sudden we're hesitant to add somebody like that to the roster. We have Raheem Mostert. We have Jeff Wilson. They drafted Devon Achane. I get it. And I know my co-host on the Pulse of Fins Nation, Ron Caniff, he's talked about this too. He thinks that Devon Achane is going to be a superstar running back someday. I hope he's right. I really, really do. But right now we're talking about 2023. And we're talking about a season that, of all seasons, this is the one where they are the most primed to make a Super Bowl run. So, yes, forgive me if I feel like adding somebody who is considered a top 10 or maybe even top 5 running back to this roster, and all we have to do is give him maybe $5 million, maybe $6 million to say, come home, come play with us, come push for a Super Bowl, and let's see if we can make something special happen. Once again, I mentioned this. Dalvin Cook has name value. Dalvin Cook has production value. Dalvin Cook has respect around the league, and he is not somebody who defensive coordinators are going to summarily dismiss just because, oh, well, he's almost 29 years old. He's probably not that special anymore. He just ran for 1,000 yards last season, and he was already injured. Now he's supposedly healthy, and you expect him to do worse? The only way his numbers do not mimic exactly what he's been doing the past several seasons is simply because he wouldn't be getting as many carries, which in this case is a good thing, because now you get to preserve him for what should hopefully be a deep playoff run. Could you imagine having Dalvin Cook still semi-fresh by week 17 and the Dolphins are pushing for, at the very least, a wild card spot? I still think they win the division at this point. They have a very good chance to win the division. But let's say they're pushing for a wild card. Would you not want to have Dalvin Cook fresh so that if push comes to shove, when they get into the playoffs, you don't have to worry about how much tread is left on those tires by the end of the season? We've seen players who are exhausted by the time the season ends. Heck, let's talk about basketball for a second. Jimmy Butler. He ended up getting, he pushed himself beyond his limits against the Boston Celtics. And once it came down to facing the Denver Nuggets, it just didn't look like there was anything left in the tank. Maybe he was exhausted. Maybe he was hurt. Maybe he was one of many different things. And he just couldn't help the Heat get over that last hump. Okay, I'm not going to blame that on Jimmy Butler, but it is something that you have to take into account. These guys are not robots. These guys are human beings, and they can get exhausted, they can get tired, they can get hurt, just like any other human being. So Dalvin Cook getting less carries is not a bad thing. This is a very good thing. You have a Pro Bowl, perennial Pro Bowl running back, and he is probably going to be your starter. Yes, but he won't have to have 20 carries a game to keep the offense going. Maybe he gets 10 carries. Maybe he gets 12 carries. Maybe he catches a few passes out of the backfield just to make sure that he stays involved. And then when you have to spell him, because you will, you have Raheem Mostert, you have Jeff Wilson, you have Devon Achane, who I know that Mike McDaniel is just itching to be able to get on that field. And he will. He will definitely get on the field. And when push comes to shove, and maybe it's 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, guess who you get to give the ball to? You don't have to hope that Devon Achane is just going to miraculously push through a pile. You have somebody in Dalvin Cook who can get that 4th and 1 better than probably anybody else on that roster right now if push came to shove. I believe that. And that just gives the Dolphins another option that they have to go on. If there's one thing that they were struggling with near the end of the season, it was Mike McDaniel's decision-making on 3rd and short, or 4th and short. If it was, they had better luck on 3rd and long somehow. But that's because the offense was pushing to stretch the field at all times. So, yes, the Dolphins gave Dalvin Cook an offer. There are other teams supposedly did that. I'm going to assume that the Jets were one of them. Okay, the Jets were one of them maybe. So if I am Dalvin Cook, I have 2 options, at least. One is the New York Jets. Maybe the Jets offered me $7 million. I'm going to go to New York. I get to play with Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, okay, not bad. It's a similar offensive scheme, similar. It's not too much of a stretch. But the taxes are going to take away $2 million of my money. And I have no affinity towards New York. Or I can go to Miami, take maybe the $5 million offer they give me. I don't have to worry about getting taxed to death. I'm going to get to keep the money they give me. Maybe they throw a couple of incentives my way to continue to perform well. And I finally get to come home and be in Miami, be close to family, be close to business, be close to many things that I haven't been able to be close to in a very long time. And not only that, even if you believe that the Jets are Super Bowl contenders with Aaron Rodgers, then fine. But at the very least, Dalvin Cook is on record saying that the Miami Dolphins are building something special down here. Why would you not want to be a part of that? So it comes down to how much more money are these other teams offering Dalvin Cook? Is it enough to overcome the no state income tax trick? We shall see. That's going to be it for this show. Thank you all so much for listening. I'm looking forward to seeing where this all goes down, because now that the Dolphins have an offer on the table, Dalvin Cook can choose to take it or he can continue to wait. I think that the Dolphins will just leave it there and say, listen, if you want to be a part of this team, by all means, it's there for you. Feel free to come and take it whenever you feel like it. That's the way I see it. So if you have not already done so, make sure you go check out You Break Wheel Fix. You can reach out to Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at youbreakwheelfix.com if you need to get your wheels fixed up, or if you just need to give your ride a little modification or maybe a design overhaul so you can really showcase your Miami Dolphins fandom. Or, of course, you can also do this. You can go to prizepicks.com, use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. All you have to do is choose whether the player that you chose will get more or less than their projected stat. It's very simple. If you're a fantasy sports fan, you need to sign up right now. Again, the promo code is 5, FIVE. Go to prizepicks.com and put in your $100 deposit to get your $100 matched by PrizePicks. We will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Fins Nation.